This is a little different for me because it's my first longer video and I usually share thoughts in much shorter pieces. But I wanted to give this one a bit more space. So I'm really excited actually to take you a little bit deeper into something I've been thinking about, and that's balance. Balance is a word I hear a lot. I hear it all the time really when people are trying to make changes, particularly around weight, health and the habits that support them. I don't want to do too much. It needs to be balanced. I've still got to live my life. I understand that. I believe in balance too. I certainly do not believe that lasting change comes from making our lives miserable and striving for perfection or putting everything else that matters on hold. Yeah, I've started to wonder whether sometimes when we talk about balance, we're actually talking about something else. What if the thing that looks like balance is sometimes self-protection? If you tried to change something before and it's not worked out the way you'd hoped, that experience stays with you. Weight is an obvious example for me because it's the world I know very well. Perhaps you've started with enormous enthusiasm before. You made changes, seen some success, thought this time I've got it. Then somewhere along the way, life happened. Habits slipped. And perhaps some of the weight or all of the weight came back on. And eventually you found yourself somewhere you'd promised yourself you would never be again. Those things teach us things. Part of us remembers that disappointment. It remembers how it felt to hope. It remembers telling people that this time things were going to be different. So when the next opportunity for change comes along, perhaps there's that little voice, that little one saying, steady, don't get carried away. You've still got to live your life. Balance. Perhaps that voice is not trying to sabotage us at all. Perhaps it's trying to protect us. Because there can be safety in not quite giving everything we've got. If I half commit and it doesn't work, I've got an explanation. Well, I was not really trying properly anyway. What happens though if I throw myself into it? What happens if I really hope? What happens if I give the best of me and still it doesn't work? That's much more vulnerable. So sometimes that looks from the outside like lack of commitment, but that might not be that willpower is the problem at all. It might be self-protection. Now, I want to be really clear here. Sometimes balance is simply balance. Sometimes pulling back is exactly the right thing to do. Sometimes we're genuinely doing too much, and sometimes our lives need rest, space, family, fun, or something completely different from the goal we've been pursuing. And I'm certainly not suggesting that every time somebody says, I need more balance, what I mean is I'm frightened. The interesting question, though, is what does balance mean for me in this situation right now? Is it wisdom? Is it fear? Is it habit? What is actually sitting underneath it? This is why I struggle with messages that simply tell us to try harder, be more disciplined, do better. If trying harder were the answer, most of us would certainly have cracked whatever we are struggling with years ago. We do not necessarily need another person telling us that we should be more committed. We might need somebody to help us become curious about why commitment feels difficult in the first place. What is that hesitation protecting? What have previous experiences taught us? What have they taught me to expect? What am I afraid might happen if I really allow myself to believe that things could be different? Those are very different questions from why can I not just stick to it? And the answers can take us somewhere very different too. There is another part of that fascinates me. We seem remarkably accepting of temporary imbalance when it takes us away from the things we want. Christmas comes along, or holiday, or summer. Perhaps there are meals out, routines change, activity drops, planning disappears. Some of the habits that normally support us quietly fall away. And we tell ourselves, it's Christmas, I'm on holiday, it's only for a few weeks. I'll get back to it afterwards. And sometimes that's absolutely fine. Life is there to be lived. What I find interesting is how comfortable we can be with a season being off kilter in that direction. What if it became equally comfortable with the season of being more committed? Not forever, not obsessively, not at the expense of everything. Just for a season. What could happen if just for 1 month you deliberately turned the dial up? What could 6 weeks of giving something greater attention create? What might happen if you choose one change and said, now, this deserves the best of me? I know something about it from my own life. There was a point when I made a very deliberate decision to invest 1 year in myself. I did not know where that year would lead. I could not see the outcome before I started. There was no guarantee that I gave myself that time, energy, commitment, well, that everything would somehow fall into place. I had to make the commitment before I had the evidence that it would work. More recently, I've been reminded of that in writing a chapter of a collaborative book. There were plenty of other things requiring my attention. Work did not disappear. Life did not stop. There were always jobs that could be done, people I could contact, and another thing sitting on the list somewhere. For a short period, though, I decided the chapter deserved more of me. And I love the way eventually I described that to myself. Some other things got good enough. The chapter got the best of me. I read it, changed it, questioned it, scribbled all over it, read it again. Eventually I reached a point where I could hand it over to other people to read. That intensity was never supposed to last forever. It did not need to. It needed to last long enough to move something important forward. And that has made me reconsider what balance actually looks like across life. Perhaps balance does not mean giving everything an equal amount of ourselves every day. Perhaps balance across life might actually require deliberate imbalance for a season. And that's where my thinking moved on again recently. What I'm going to say, what deserves the best of me right now? I think I need another question beside it. How will I know when I've given it enough? Because otherwise there's danger in that, because this deserves the best of me simply becomes another justification for never stopping. Another hour, another improvement, another job, another goal, another email, another idea. More. And suddenly, deliberate commitment has become something completely different. There's no completion. There's no moment when I say I did that. That was good enough. That was enough. I've been thinking a lot about this. There used to be more natural endings to our lives. A newspaper had a final page. A television programme finished. The shops closed. The catalogue had a back cover. Now so much of our world is infinite. Social media feed does not finish. There's always another programme available on the television. The online shop never runs out of shelves. The in-block box replenishes itself. There's always another piece of work that could be done. There's always somebody else doing bigger, better, faster, richer, thinner, fitter, or apparently more successful than we are. We are surrounded by more, and I wonder whether we've lost some of our stopping cues. Those little signals that say, this is complete. You can stop now. I want to be careful here too, because I do not want to make wanting more the villain. I like more. I like things. I like ideas. I like achievement. I like experiences. I like beautiful things. I like possibility. I get enormous pleasure for looking forward to things. I'm also somebody whose brain can finish one project and almost immediately go, oh, what about this? What about that? That's part of who I am, and I like that part of me. The problem is not necessarily wanting what comes next. The problem is when what comes next changes the meaning of what came before. I achieved something that felt wonderful, and immediately I move the benchmark. I finish something I'm proud of and instantly see what else needs doing. Something that was enough 5 minutes ago becomes inadequate because something bigger or newer has appeared. More can invalidate what came before it. And perhaps in doing that, it steals some of the joy that was available in the moment. We get a great deal of pleasure from anticipation. I certainly do. This is excitement of something coming. Then there's the experience itself, and after that, surely there should be another stage, completion, satisfaction. That was lovely. I did that. I'm proud of that. That was enough. Then at some point, another desire can arrive. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What interests me is what happens when the cycle becomes anticipation, experience, what next? Anticipation, experience, what next? We become exceptionally practiced at wanting, perhaps less practiced at arriving. It's got uncomfortable when I turned it on myself. I often describe myself as somebody who needs a project. If I've got one, I'm fine. If I haven't got one, I get bored. Even this, thinking this through, my brain is cycling, so much so that some of the words aren't really coming out just as I intended them. But I've always regarded that simply as part of me. I'm curious. I'm energetic. I can be a bull in a china shop. I get excited by ideas. I genuinely love creating things. I still believe all of that is true, but recently I found myself wondering whether there might occasionally be another layer. I tend to feel things strongly. Historically, when emotions have felt overwhelming, whether those emotions were comfortable or uncomfortable, food has sometimes been a way for me to dampen them. So I found myself asking a question I'd never really asked before. Is charging enthusiastically into the next project always simply because I love the next project? Or could there sometimes be something about the experience of stopping itself? Perhaps if I finish something and immediately create the next thing, I do not have to sit very long with the completion. Feel the feelings. Experience the emotional response to what I've done. Even satisfaction requires me to feel it. I do not know whether that explains anything about me. I do not know whether that explains anything about you, but I'm interested enough to ask the question. And that is really what I mean by coaching. Coaching curiosity. Not deciding immediately what something means. Not diagnosing ourselves. Not judging it. Just noticing. That's interesting. I wonder what's happening there. I wonder what that's really about. And that led me to what may be one of the most useful questions I've ever asked myself. When I want more, does that desire come from satisfaction or dissatisfaction? There's a version of more that says, that was wonderful. I would love another experience like it. I'm really proud of what I created. I have another idea. I love my life and I'm excited about what else might be possible. Then there's another version. That was not quite good enough. I should have done more. I could have done more. Somebody else has something better. Perhaps the next achievement, purchase, experience will finally make me feel as though I've arrived. From the outside, those two people might look exactly the same. Both might start another business, book another holiday, set another goal, begin another project. Internally, though, they're starting to feel from very different places. One says that was enough and I want more. One says that was not enough and I need more. And perhaps that distinction matters far more than the amount we want. This has changed my understanding enough. Enough does not mean giving up ambition. It does not mean settling. It does not mean deciding we should all simply be grateful for whatever we already have and never want anything else. Enough does not require the abstinence of desire. Perhaps enough is the ability to experience completion without requiring the absence of desire. I can recognise that something was good enough without promising myself to never want anything else. I can enjoy today and anticipate tomorrow. I can be proud of what I achieved and still be fascinated by what I might create next. Perhaps what matters is allowing a moment of completion before immediately demanding another beginning. I started all of this wondering whether sometimes balance can actually be self-protection. I've ended up somewhere slightly different. I think balance might require us to ask two questions. The first, what deserves the best of me right now? Not everything, not forever. What matters enough in this season of my life to receive more of my energy, time, or courage? Then the second, how will I know when I've given it enough? What will completion look like? When will I allow myself to say, I did that? It counts. It was enough. And if another idea arrives 5 minutes later and I'm fizzing with excitement about it, fine. Maybe I can simply ask, is this the next thing, growing out of satisfaction? Or is it trying to rescue me from dissatisfaction? It may not be an instant answer, and that's okay. Sometimes the value is in finally asking a different question. These are exactly the kinds of conversations I love having through my coaching work. Not telling somebody what they should do, not telling them to try harder, not deciding for them what balance ought to look like. Creating enough space to become curious about why we do what we do, why we don't do what we maybe wanted to do. Perhaps sometimes the thing we call balance is really balance, and sometimes it's self-protection. Sometimes a season of deliberate imbalance is exactly what we need, and sometimes the thing we need most is simply permission to recognise, I have done enough. So I'll leave you with those two questions. What deserves the best of you right now? And how will you know when you've given that enough? Because perhaps the greatest investment we will ever make is not in doing more of everything. It's in choosing what matters enough to receive more of us and knowing when to let that be enough.